There we are. Hi, everyone. It's Sarithkin from Montier, and I'm here with the Murder Duke interview with His Grace Hans from the West, who has reigned in the West 4 times now.
Yeah.
And was also the Prince of the Mist. Thank you for agreeing to participate. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I usually start these with your origin story. So if you can tell me how you found the SCA, why, when, where, all of that, that would be great.
All right. And I imagine there's a pool out there somewhere that keeps track of how many guys have different stories and, you know, which ones they are. And I've got a fairly typical one. I was a football player in high school that also played D&D. And one of the kids I played D&D with said, "Hey, you got to check out this thing my folks do." Next thing you know, they put me in armor, football's in the rearview mirror, and I'm hitting people with sticks.
So how old were you then?
15.
Wow. And did your friend play too?
Yeah. Very sort of fringe. Mostly his folks were very active. Okay. He would show up occasionally, disappear for a while.
Was that in the West?
Yeah.
So did you start fighting right away? Is that what drew you in?
Yeah, fighting's what brought me in, and it's what kept me for a long time.
So were you able to fight at 15?
I didn't tell anyone I was 15. I mean, the minor waiver that my folks signed said I was 16, so of course I could fight, right? That was back when you could fight at 16 with a waiver.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so tell me about your first event and finding fighting.
So I found fighting at a sort of combo demo and fighter practice that was being held in a park in Santa Cruz. And Adrian, my friend whose folks were active, had said, "Hey, you got to come check this thing out." So a couple friends and I went down, and Lawrence of Red Forest, who I still run into periodically, even though he hasn't played in 20 years, said, "Yeah, you're about my size. Here, try this." And they hung his armor on me, and I went out and stood in front of Cane Wolf Cup Crusher, and that might not have been the best plan, but I'm stubborn, so I stuck around. Nice. It was fun.
So did you start out Sword and Shield?
Yeah. Started Sword and Shield probably a couple of months worth, and then decided that was dumb and I wanted to fight with the glaive.
Okay. And did you specialize in the glaive for a while then?
About a year. And then I went off to the Corps. Went off to be a Marine, so I didn't play much for most of that 5 years.
So during that first year in the West, did you have, or I guess it's more than a year because you were only 15, did you have a fighting mentor?
Kind of. A guy named Bob McClintock, who hasn't been seen in decades at this point, kind of showed me the ropes and helped me out. He had a little kind of half-ass armory in his garage and helped me get my gear together, and basically said, "All right, you got all your stuff on. It kind of goes like this. Go have fun."
Cool.
Sort of a sink or swim attitude.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get your own kit together?
About 3 weeks.
That is super fast.
I was motivated. I knew where there was a carpet store that had remnants. Nice. My first kit was a battered old great helm that I was given. And when I say battered, I mean thrashed. Legal, but barely. And steel knees and steel elbows that we made in Bob's shop. And a bunch of carpet held together with string. Literally string.
Wow. So were you just going to practices, or were you also doing tourneys and melees?
I was pretty much just going to practices for the first 6 or 8 months. I went to a couple events after that and kind of started improving things, like got a tabard.
Makes a world of difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Actually got boots instead of running around in my high top tennis shoes all the time. It was a big deal when you're 16.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I was just going to say that I did that for a while and, got to hit people with sticks. It was good.
All right. So you're very well dressed. Were you always sort of a clothes horse even back then, or is that sort of an evolution?
I think you may have an extra S in there.
Okay. Oh, whore.
Yes.
Okay. I'm like, which S?
Truth be told, I really didn't care what I wore for a long time. Long about, I guess it was the late 90s. I started actually realizing that I had the opportunity to dress better because I started knowing people who did and who could make things. And so that was the beginning of my 14th century phase. And then Beck got his hooks into me, and it was Germans after that.
So you went into the Marine Corps for 4 years?
Just shy of 5 is
Okay.
what it ended up being.
And you didn't really play much while you were in the Corps?
Not much. I went to a couple fighter practices and one tournament when I was down in Caid for a while. But other than that, not really.
Okay. And when you came back, did you just dive right back in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
And did you find a new fighting mentor then?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually ended up doing a lot of work with Robert of Woods End, who later that year squired me and taught me most of what I know about really how to be a knight in the Arthurian mold.
Did you have an idea of that before you started working with him?
I'd read all the romances and, read Mordauthur and could practically quote the story of Balin and Balin, the brothers. But Robert is the one who really stood up and, without saying a word, said, "You do it like this."
Cool. And did you continue to fight Glaive?
No. I decided that I was going to get serious about this thing, and that meant not getting hit as much. So I probably ought to learn to use a shield.
And what shield did you go to?
Strapped heater.
Strapped heater. Okay.
It was what Robert used. So I tried it, decided I liked it, stuck with it almost exclusively for about a decade.
And what did your training look like at that time? Like, how many fight practices did you hit a week? What else did you do?
I started, some outside fighting stuff. When I was in the service, I discovered the gym and became a little bit of a gym rat. So I was lifting probably 5 days a week at that point. I'd probably spend between 7 and 8 hours a week lifting.
Wow.
I didn't do cardio because I hate running and hadn't found mountain bikes yet. So I didn't have any cardio I didn't hate. I'd go to the Santa Cruz practice every Thursday. I'd drive over the hill to Mission, which I still miss, probably 3 weeks out of the month. And then there would be events on weekends, and weekends when there weren't events, Robert would do a household practice. Okay. So I was probably fighting, on average, I was probably fighting a little over twice a week.
Did Robert live in the same area as you?
About an hour and a half away.
And the Mission practice, just for people that aren't from the West Coast, can you expand a little bit about why that was such a great practice?
Sure. Mission at its heyday, which is pretty much when I was coming up, was regularly 40 people in armor, often more, and generally 20 to 25% knights, and a slow knight was only 2 dukes. We had, before I was knighted, just to kind of stick a pin in the time frame, we had Beck, John of Skye, Jade, Fabian, Uther, Connor. I guess Uther and Connor became dukes later, but they were showing up. Havek would come down every once in a blue moon. Most of those guys were pretty regular. So it was a deep pool, and there was a lot there to learn.
Yeah, pretty good crucible.
Yeah.
So did Beck get his hooks into you before or after you got knighted? Because you guys have like some similarities in your styles.
We do, and there's a reason for that. I started hanging out with Steve about probably 18 months before I was knighted, maybe 2 years before I was knighted. The joke is that Robert taught me to be a knight, and then I went to grad school at BecU.
Okay.
He's the reason that, frankly, Robert's the reason I'm a knight. Steve's the reason I'm a duke. Steve and I would fight a lot, and we're of similar size, and we see the fight very similarly, and we've come to think about the fight very similarly. And for a while, I mean, the difference was what color's the gear. He was better than I was at that point, probably still is, but realistically, we were doing the same things. Just he'd be slightly more on the finesse side, and I'd be a little more on the brute force side, but it was the same thing.
And how did you guys hook up? Like,
met him at an event or a practice. I don't even really remember at this point.
And was he someone that you were patterning your style on, or did you guys sort of have sort of similar styles and you knew that he could help you reach the next level?
Mostly I just really enjoyed fighting him.
Okay.
And, I would fight him at Mission pretty regularly. And the more we fought, the more we both enjoyed it. And the more my style sort of shifted towards what he does. And then from there, it became interesting.
Okay. Can you talk about how your style shifted and what that was like for you?
Sure. In working with Robert, I learned a very classic, almost an old castle, side-strapped heater style. The shield is in front of you, top corner slightly advanced, sword behind your head, settle into your hips, go hit people. It's kind of limiting, and working with Steve then showed me where those limits were and how I could change them, how I could get around them, how I could think about them in ways that allowed me to just step right past them. Something as simple as switching from shield foot forward to sword foot forward changes the fight entirely. And, I'm still using a side-strapped heater and the same broadsword. I've just switched my feet. Now I can do an extra, 20% of stuff. And that transition from here is a very solid, stable home platform to let's go play with Flights of Fancy was a real change. And I like to think that I was able to, if not maximize that opportunity, certainly take a lot of good from it.
Did you have to take a step back to take a step forward with changing your style?
Not really.
No.
Steve was really good about teaching me things that would fit with what I was doing, but add to it. Okay. Rather than saying, okay, this thing you're doing, we need to forget that, turn it around, fold it inside out, do something different.
Okay. And before you got knighted, were you fighting in crowns and cornets and stuff?
Yeah.
And did you ever have any struggles with like tournament head or mental focus? No, that's nothing that you've ever struggled with?
Not really. I think because I went from high school athletics directly into fighting, okay, it's a full contact thing. It's game day. Let's go.
Okay. Did you reign as prince before you got knighted or after?
After.
Are you getting heckled?
I'm getting heckled. Helga's calling me a liar because there was a period just a few years ago when I kind of lost my ability to just walk into a fight and kill people.
How did you get over that?
A lot of heckling from Helga. I didn't even realize what was going on, but what was happening is I would fall into teacher mode.
Okay.
I had spent so long wanting people to be successful and teaching people to be successful that I had kind of fallen out of the habit of, okay, it's tourney day. you've learned everything from me you're going to learn until tomorrow. Today, we get to see not only what you have done with it, but whether or not you can do it in front of me when I'm not being nice to you. And I had kind of lost track of that and eventually got myself back together.
Cool. I think that's a trap a lot of people fall into. It's because it's hard to flip the switch if you're not aware that you're not, right?
It is. And I personally have one additional piece of that is a legacy of my time in the Corps, which is either you do something perfectly or it's trash. It's perfect or it's shit. And because my tournament fighting wasn't perfect, because my headspace wasn't where I wanted it to be every time I wanted it to be there, downward spiral.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people struggle with that, where in order to feel prepared for a tourney or a big tourney, they have to feel like they've trained at a certain level, and if they haven't reached what they think is perfect, like their perfect training, they don't feel prepared. So how do you get over perfection, like perfection paralysis?
How do I stop letting perfect get in the way of good?
Yes, or great. I wouldn't say good. I would say great.
I'll take that compliment.
Yeah.
Mostly what I have done is allowed myself to fail. If I enter a tournament and can't figure out which end of the stick to hang on to that day, all right, I'll be grumpy at myself because I screwed it up. But by the next day, I'm fine. And then I can set that behind me. Partly because, well, if I don't, I'm going to hear about it.
We all need a Helga.
Yes, but you can't have her. She's mine.
Okay.
Oh, and she's continuing to heckle, but I'm not going to tell you what she said.
Okay.
Realistically, the way I'd get past it is look at it, accept that it happened, give myself a day or two to be pissed at me, and then set that aside, pick up my tools, and go back to work.
Okay. Have you ever struggled with worrying too much about looking perfect fighting, that you can't relax into the fight? Because I know a lot of people kind of struggle with that as well.
Not so much with looking perfect, but with looking clean.
Okay.
With feeling like I needed to have it so clearly obvious from any perspective, from anywhere somebody was standing, that my fight was perfect and clean and that my calibration was correct, that it actually kind of got in the way sometimes. And in retrospect, okay, I'll pay that price. I would rather be clean and fall down than not clean and stand up.
Well, it's one of the cool things about your fight, and I think one of the reasons why it's so fun to fight you is that you're always willing to say, I can do that better, right? Or I don't think I did that good enough. And I think that those kind of fights where you don't let your opponent take garbage are always sort of more fun because you're elevating each other. I don't know. That's my view.
To quote Duke Branos back in the Mid-Realm,
okay,
he said this to me in the middle of a fight in the Heroic Champions at Penzic, when I tried to take a leg shot that he wasn't happy with. He looked at me and he said, "No junk pool, my friend. No junk pool. Get up."
Very cool.
And I've hung on to that. I mean, I believed that before, but having that just crystal clear example of a fairly high stakes kind of thing. I mean, all the contending crowns are standing there watching this fight. And to still feel that it is more important to fight correctly than to win, that's a big deal.
How did that become sort of a focus for you? Was it always like that, or was it after you got knighted?
It was before I got knighted, and partly it's Beck's influence. It's, if you've done it right, it's going to be really obvious that you've done it right. Partly it's what Robert taught me. If you didn't do something correctly, why are you taking credit for it? If you didn't actually hit the guy with the edge of the sword, you didn't hit the guy. Don't let him think that you did. And then about a year before I was knighted, I was taken aside at mission by a group of knights, and it was pointed out to me that they thought that I was not necessarily counting the way I should be, that perhaps I was asking for a blow to be a bit stouter than it should have been. In short, that I was not thick, but on my way there. And that crushed me. I didn't touch my armor for 3 weeks, which at that point, I mean, I was fighting 3-4 times a week at that point. And I just dropped it in a pile and walked away from it. Finally got myself back together and decided that there was never, ever, ever, ever going to be a question in anyone's mind about whether or not I should have fallen down. Ever. Have I been perfect on that? No. Nobody can be. Have I been as close to perfect as I can manage? Yeah. And I will continue to be that.
I think that happens to people more often than we admit. And I think usually when people take someone aside like that, it comes from a place of love where they want to see you succeed and they want you to be the fighter that you want to be. But it can be super soul crushing, especially when that was never your intent. And, you know, and you were raised by two guys who are pillars of chivalry. How were you able to take it and then refocus?
I had a long conversation with Fabian because he was there. He wasn't part of the conversation, but he was there that night. And I went and found him. I actually went up to his shop and showed up with a 6-pack and said, "Can I pick your brain?" And what he said to me basically was, look, everybody goes through this. There will come a point where a person's belief in how effective their defense is has actually gotten ahead of their defense, because your offense progresses faster than your defense for most people. So you see what your offense is doing, you assume your defense is on par with that, and suddenly it's not lining up. So you end up in a place where you think, oh, I got a piece of that. I must have blocked enough of it, right? Not always the case. And we talked for a bit, and I told him I had not touched my gear in a couple of weeks at that point. And he said, why in the hell would you do something that dumb? So I put my gear on and went back to practice and went back to mission and went and fought every Duke that was there. Fought every knight that was there that night. I could barely walk by the end of the night because I'd fought so much. It was not uncommon for mission practice to go 3 to 3.5 hours worth of fighting. And I was often one of the first guys in armor and generally one of the last guys. And unlike some of the folks who claim that, I fought the whole time. So I learned. And you can tell when you talk to the guys who claim it and say, sure thing, Your Excellency. It shows. And since then, haven't had a problem.
When you came back from that, was there a period where you overcompensated? Or did you ask for feedback? Like, I'm sort of wondering, like, because I think a lot of people do go through that. Like, they get feedback and they don't know how to make it better because it was never their intent to cheat, or to be seen as a cheater or taking too hard or whatever. So I'm just sort of, somebody just asked me to ask you why you're so self-deprecating. We'll get to that later.
Okay. I'll poke it.
anyway, so I just wanted to see if you could share your experience about how you worked through that.
I started out really embarrassed, really pissed at myself, and decided that I was going to fix this, and I was going to fix it right the hell now, and that anyone who didn't already know there was an issue wasn't going to. In retrospect, if it was enough of a deal for a half a dozen nights to take me aside and say, look, dude, this is an issue, everybody and their brother knew about it. They just weren't saying anything. Thank you. So my plan when I came back was I am going to take more lightly, not necessarily everything that touches me, but anything that I don't feel I had a solid block on, or anything that I tried to avoid and didn't clearly avoid, I'm going to take it. You're using the 1 to 10 scale, where good is anywhere from like 4.5 to about 7. I decided I was going to take 3s. And I did, until I was confident that I could tell when something was a 3. And once I really felt clear on that, I started picking it back up. And the result was that I got much better at catching a piece of the blow and avoiding a piece, rather than just doing one or the other. And so if something still got to me, there wasn't much left. I mean, I also got better at just blocking stuff or completely avoiding it. But what that really taught me was the importance of having a primary way to avoid getting hit and a secondary that's also in effect.
I've noticed a lot of the really good fighters that are a lot of fun to fight, their victory condition is almost just not getting hit. And when they do get hit, I think a lot of them take a lighter blow. I think I would include you in that. And I just think it's kind of an awesome mentality and an example to set. So I just think it's kind of cool the way you worked through that. So
thank you.
Yeah. So I will ask you a self-deprecating question. So they said, why is he so self-deprecating about his epic level talent? There are few better.
Well, first off, to whoever said that, thank you. I'll take the compliment. I am self-deprecating because I never want to be arrogant. I have been arrogant. It was my besetting sin for the last couple of years that I was an unbelted fighter, and the first 5 years or so after being knighted. I have really in the past had a problem separating what I think I am from what I really am. And I guess I just went too far back the other way. So now I'm more prone to run myself down than talk myself up. I figure there are people out there who will talk me up if I deserve it.
Okay. I think the whole line between arrogance and confidence is super interesting, because it's a very thin line, and the greats walk it very well. So we could probably talk an hour just about that, but I'm just sort of wondering what would be your recommendation to people who are self-deprecating to their detriment? Like they just can't believe in themselves because they can't see themselves at the level they're actually at.
I feel very called out. Because that's me.
Well, I'm sort of asking because I struggle with it. So
okay. Here's the advice I give everyone dealing with anything on the scale, from at one end overweening arrogance to at the other complete self-obliteration. It is key to understand humility. And humility is not this modern concept of being humble, at least not in my view. My view of humility is understanding exactly who and what you are, being that, nothing more and nothing less. When you allow yourself to be less than you know you are, or you think yourself to be less than you know that you really are, you are failing in your humility. Same goes when you are greater, or when you think that you are greater, or say that you are greater, or behave as if you were. How to figure out who and what you really are? Well, that's the hard part. So the advice I would give on that is look at what it is other people say about you, not to you, but about you. Learn what your reputation is. And then ask yourself, is that the thing I'm shooting for? My understanding of my reputation, by and large, is that I'm a playboy who's pretty good with a stick. Those things are true. I am not the best stick on the planet. On a good day, I might be able to see that guy from where I'm standing, but I'm not that. I am no Branos. I am no Mark. But there's still quite a bit of skill here. I mean, if I'm being real, I have to admit that. And given that I've put 30 odd years of work into it, I hope that it's there. So the key, and the thing that I wrestle with, the thing that I've had trouble with for years, is figuring out how much to discount the reputation, the word that gets back to me, and how much to inflate my own belief. Because inevitably, in my career, my reputation has outstripped my picture of myself in terms of fighting prowess. It always has. So what I've had to figure out is, how much do I discount and how much do I inflate to find that place in between where I'm comfortable saying, yes, this is me.
I love that. I think that is pretty deep, actually. I'm actually going to write that down because I really like it. But thank you.
Sure.
I think
decades into, so I'm glad it's helpful.
Yeah, it's just an interesting way to approach it, because you don't want to believe your press, right? Like that's the way that you get on the wrong side of the line.
I just can't do it.
All right, so let's go back before you were knighted. So that all happened, and you were knighted about, you said 6 months later?
Yeah.
So was that a surprise to you, or? Not
really. I'd been to the finals of Crown 3 days before I was offered.
Oh, okay.
And the only reason I wasn't an unbelted king is because Uther was.
Oh, so it was you and Uther both unbelts in the finals?
Both of us unbelts. He was already a count at that point. And I mean, that was the West Crown, the March Crown, where 5 of the last 6 were unbelts.
Was that the pooled one or the counted blow one? No.
Those came later.
Okay.
This was March of 1999.
Okay, so long time ago.
So, yeah, way back.
Way back.
But yeah, Uther and I fought in the finals, and Robert came to me on Sunday at Crown and said, so on Tuesday, His Majesty is going to be offering you admittance to the Shiv. Are you going to take it, or should he offer you in private so that you can say no? Because I said no the first time.
Oh, well, let's talk about that.
Oh, it was real simple. I had no interest in being knighted by Jade.
Okay. So how long before your second offer was the first?
A few months.
Okay.
It was the previous reign.
Okay. And did your mentors know why you said no? It wasn't that you didn't want to be a knight. It was just
Robert knew exactly why I said no. He came to me and said, it looks like it's going to go this way at the next council. If it does, what do you want me to say? I said, say no.
Okay.
And it went that way, and they said they wanted to offer, and Robert said, he's going to say no. So they didn't.
Okay.
And then when Garrick did make the offer after that crown tournament, I took it then.
All right. The West seems to make offers at like fight practices and stuff. Is that a cultural thing?
Partly it's a factor of the shorter reigns.
Okay.
Side note, I wish we had 6-month reigns. That out of the way. I was offered at practice. I've made offers anywhere from in court at an event to at a birthday party dressed as Elvis.
You made an offer dressed as Elvis?
Hey, when the king wants you. As it happened, the lady who we were offering was having a birthday party on the weekend that we wanted to do the offer at an event. So she wasn't going to be at the event. But the birthday party was Sunday. And her Pelican called me and said, hey, they're doing it's a costume party. Would you be willing to show up, complete surprise, in an Elvis costume? I'll rent you the costume so you can still be dressed as the king, right? And I said, sure, why not?
Did you rock one of those white jumpers?
Damn straight.
All right.
Sequined
Are
white
there photos somewhere?
Giant shades. It was Vegas Elvis.
Nice. I love that. Okay, so you got offered at fight practice. Did you have a vigil?
Yes.
Okay. Did you do the traditional sort of bath and all of that?
Not the bath. I did the all-night vigil, throw the party out front that I didn't get to go to. Didn't have anyone else who was holding a vigil that night, so I couldn't do what my Squire brother got to do, which was play chess at dawn with the other guy who was being knighted that day. That was Robert and Parlin and Brian and Bellatrix got knighted the same day, so that was their thing.
That's cool.
And then, watched the sunrise and talked to Robert a little bit more then about what this all meant. Had a nap and got up to go to court.
And did you do sometimes in the West, you guys have these like really nice big processionals for your knightings and your peerage ceremonies. Did you do that?
It was a procession. It wasn't a huge one. Robert's house was moderately small at that point. We probably had 10 or 12 people in the procession. But, my banner and the household stuff. And
did you get any kind of legacy regalia?
Not so much legacy. The belt I was knighted with was the Darkwood belt, which is the barony that I lived in at the time and almost still do. I drive over there every day for work now. And every knight who's ever been knighted out of the barony of Darkwood has been knighted with that belt. So I got that. The chain was one that my grand knight, Andrew of Riga, had commissioned from Rat, Richard of Aldertree, and then gave me. And the spurs were brand new. Robert had commissioned a set of spurs from Luther Anschelm and made the hardware for them. And that was what I got.
Very cool. Very cool. So after you were knighted, you won Cornet, right?
Yep.
Right? Okay. So tell me about winning Cornet.
Do you want the serious part or the funny part?
Yes.
Okay. Funny part first.
Okay.
Phelan Silverhawk, the guy who was knighted despite never having learned any decent technique, who strung all kinds of weird crap that didn't work together and made it work because he lived out in the middle of nowhere and didn't really have anyone to work with, said to me about 3 or 4 rounds in, God damn it, Hansa, quit playing with your food. I'm thinking, what? I'm not playing with my food. I'm going out and killing people. Apparently, he thought I should be killing them faster. So for the rest of the tournament, I did. That seemed to be the thing that flipped the switch for me that day, where I went from, all right, I'm fighting, I'm doing the thing. This is, it's my first tournament as a knight, my first Cornet as a knight. There was one crown before that went exceedingly poorly. And that's a different story. And so I walked into this one thinking, yeah, all right, I think I can do this. I've been to finals of the Coronet before. I've been to finals of Crown before. Damn it, I can do this. And then Phelan said that to me. I'm like, am I screwing around here? I mean, what's going on? So I kind of locked down and just bore down and started really dispatching people. And that worked pretty well. And then it was time for finals, and I had this bright idea. Hey, I love single sword. I'm fighting Brian at Bellatrix. He loves single sword. So I went over to him before the final. And, hey, Brian, how about no matter how the first fight goes, we do the second fight single sword, and then the third fight whatever. He was like, all right. And after the second fight, I was heir to the mists.
Nice. So tell me about your first time reigning. Was there anything surprising to you?
Coronet or Crown?
Coronet.
There wasn't a lot of surprise there. I think the biggest surprise was traveling the Gulf Wars and seeing just how traveling royalty are treated off the West Coast. Here on the West Coast, we treat visiting royalty reasonably well. And I think it's the further north you go, the better that you get treated. And on the East Coast, the further south you go, the better you get treated. Because Kiara and I showed up at Gulf Wars as Prince and Princess of the Mists. Most of the event has no clue what a landed prince is. They don't have any. I mean, at that point, Glen Aubin had been a principality for a year or two and was going crown the next. I think that fall they went crown, they went kingdom. But it was very clearly a transitional thing the whole time. They're not used to the idea of, oh, hey, I'm prince of a principality that's been in existence for, at that point, 30-something years, almost 40 years at that point. But they treated us like we were a king and a queen of somewhere, which was really cool. And that surprised the hell out of me. I later had the opportunity to go back to Gulf Wars the next year as Joe Nobody, and pretty much got treated the same way. So it was really cool. But that was kind of the biggest surprise for me, was traveling, because before then I really hadn't.
Do you mean you hadn't really traveled off the West Coast? Because did you go to like Estrellas and stuff? Or
I had been to, at that point, I think I'd been to one Estrella, half a dozen West Ontiers, and 3 or 4 West Caides back when we had them.
Okay. So traveling, I think is super important to evolve. Did it open like a window or a door for you? Like, did you have an epiphany when you're traveling? Like, there's stuff I can adopt from other places?
It really has. I mean, extending it beyond that first couple of bits of travel as Prince. The more I travel, the more well-rounded I become, the more I learn, the more I see about how things work. The greater my grasp of interkingdom anthropology becomes. And the more able I am to just take bits and pieces of what I pick up in other places and sort of meld them in with what I already do or think. And I think that it makes me a better knight. It makes me a better peer. It makes me a better fighter.
Your first kingdom reign, can you tell me what was surprising about that? And did you do further travel, and did that broaden your horizons more?
I'll answer that in reverse order.
Okay.
Yeah, there was plenty of travel. It was, Ebony and I traveled a lot, courtesy of Brock, her husband, because Brock was willing to.
Brock's amazing.
He was willing to foot the bill so that we could all go places, so that she could have those experiences, which was awesome. As far as what surprised me, everything. I walked into it thinking, I've been Prince. I've been Prince of the Mist. It's right in the middle of, Central West. I see how this all goes. I've been on Queen's Guards. I've been a Queen's Champion. I've been on Kingdom Courts. I got this. I could have been more wrong, but I'd have had to work at it.
Okay. So elaborate on that a little bit. Like, was it the administrative part or just?
It was the administrative part. It was the pace. A principality reign is 6 months, and the territory that you cover is smaller. In a kingdom reign, you're doing just as much, but you're traveling more, and you're doing it in 2/3 of the time. There's something every night. Your phone rings, or you're on email, or you're going somewhere, or somebody's coming to you. Excuse me. Every single night. And the pace it can be murderous.
You had, well, actually, before I get there, what was your favorite part of your first kingdom reign?
The look on Ebony's face when the crown hit her head.
That's cool.
Okay. Flat out, best part of that whole reign.
Cool. All right, so there was like a gap between your first reign and your second reign.
Yes.
Where like technology exploded and all that kind of stuff. Tell me the difference between your first and your second reign. How was it different? Because it was still the West, right?
Yeah, still the West. It was Ebony and I. So really the change there was technology. My phone rang a lot less. I spent a lot more time plugged into my computer. That's really it.
Yeah. Okay. Was there a difference in the way that you felt you were treated, like between being a count and duke?
Not really.
No. Okay. You don't get better pickups now?
I don't know, maybe I do. But maybe that's just, I think that has more to do with the reputation I have built for who I am and how I fight than the regalia that I wear.
I think that's probably a lot of truth in that.
And then the pickups that I get did not change appreciably from before the second reign to after it.
So you also reigned 2 more times with Helga.
Yes.
So tell me what the difference is to you from reigning with a friend to reigning with your love, I guess.
So in no particular order, reigning with a friend, although I do love Ebony. I really do. But for sake of conversation, we'll use the term friend.
Okay.
Reigning with a friend means that you have a wider base of support, because Ebony had her people and I had my people, and then there was our people. Reigning with Helga, they are all our people. Other than that, if you choose the right people to reign with, the rest of your relationship with them really doesn't change it.
Cool. All right. What's your favorite Western Kingdom tradition?
Roses.
Roses. That's a good one. A lot of people say that one.
I'm not surprised. It is sanctioned pickups at Crown.
So a lot of people that I talk to talk about how they don't really get to fight as much while they're reigning, but on the flip side of that, you get to travel a lot, right? And so you get to fight at interkingdom wars and stuff. Have you felt that reigning has actually elevated your fighting because you've gotten more exposure?
I would say it has changed my fighting.
Okay.
In that the additional travel means I'm able to pick more stuff up. I'm exposed to more things. but I don't think it has necessarily improved or degraded my fighting. It has simply changed the way I do it. It's changed my style some. I've been able to pick up additional tools.
But you still fight sword and shield mostly, right?
Mostly. Lately, I've been fighting a lot of tournaments with a boar spear.
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I'm addicted to Crown Tournament, and if I don't want to reign, I better not fight sword and shield.
Okay.
And
what is it that you find addicting about Crown Tournament?
the fact that when I walk into a crown, I know for sure and certain, no matter who is standing in front of me, they are going to give me everything they've got. And I'm going to do the same. There's no holding back. There's no being nice. There's no training them. There's no trying to draw a particular response. No. Today is the day when we find out what you have learned and you find out what I have learned, and we see which of us brought better stuff.
As a Duke, do you still have fighting mentors?
Oh, yeah.
Who are they?
Helga. And she's given me this look.
Well, I think it's apt. I would agree with that. I think she is a major pusher, like in a good way.
She is. She is also more able to see through my bullshit than anybody else. So she can call me on it.
And she's a great fight analyst too.
Yes, one of the best. What?
We're saying nice things.
She's making faces and choking. It's like she doesn't believe that she's one of the best fight analysts in the world.
Sean just told me that today.
Now she's flipping me off. Wow. I must be right. She's flipping me off.
We're not allowed to say nice things about her, I guess.
Yeah, apparently. Apparently that whole humility thing needs work.
She's on the wrong side of the line.
Yeah. Other influences. Branos, I don't see him much because I haven't been traveling as much lately. And obviously with COVID, nobody's going anywhere. But anytime Branos and I are in the same place at the same time, stuff gets talked about that sticks in my head. I'm Brennan, back east, Duke Brennan. Same thing. The way we fight is entirely different. The way we think about fighting has some similarities. So anytime we actually talk about stuff, I benefit from it. Havek, we live in the same house, so, we kind of bounce stuff off each other, fight pretty regularly. And then there are the guys that I look at and either I watch them fight or I go fight them or, watch a video of their fighting. And I pay attention to not just what they're doing, but why they're doing it. Guys like Sean. Any of the Duke Svens. Mostly OG Sven and Stioran Sven. But watching the tape of them. Uther, whenever he and I get to fight, we came up together and there's still stuff that he's figured out that I haven't. And I think there's some stuff I figured out that he hasn't. And you can generally tell which of us is in our wheelhouse that day by who wins the fight. Just a lot of guys. Anytime I travel, I look for strawberry leaves and I go hit them. And odds are I'm going to learn something.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest things about fighting is there's always more to learn. And it's also one of the most frustrating things sometimes as well. But it is super cool. And it's cool to see that somebody at your caliber is still searching out people and learning. It just never ends. Yeah.
There's a lot out there I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've had you almost an hour, so let's look at your killing tool. Unless there's something else you want to talk about that I haven't asked you
My time is yours.
about. Okay, let's look at your killing tool.
All right. Since you said the 30-30 lever action was not allowed, here's my broadsword.
And how do you put it together?
Carve the hilt. I think that's in the camera now.
Yeah,
I tend to go,
there's a trigger in there though, right?
yeah, roughly an almond shape with a trigger. The hilt is fairly light. This one's 18 gauge stainless and fluted, so it doesn't fall apart. Some of the others I use are spring steel. I like the light hilt. Carve the sword so it's actually got a sword-like profile. You know, still got to keep it 1.25 inches wide, but it's got distinct flats and edges. Put a point on it because I like to stab people. And that's about that. It's
How long is it?
36 inches overall. I cut the stick at 35.5 and then put 1 inch of foam on it and then crank that down to 1/2 inch when I'm done.
Cool. And do you try to get it to balance at a certain point or right there?
Let's find out. It's right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of them are right around there. I tend to not want a really heavy stick, and I like the light basket hilts, and I want one that's going to roll when I want it to, but that I can also turn corners with, and you can't do that if a stick is excessively tip heavy or excessively hilt heavy.
Okay. Cool. You ready for the final 10?
Prepared.
All right. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
You know, I'm going to have to choose someone that I have not fought before, but who I want to fight. Anstiorin Duke Sven.
You've never fought Anstiorin Duke Sven before?
We had
You didn't get to fight him at Sport of Kings?
We had one opportunity at Sport of Kings, and then he got pulled one way and I got pulled the other. And then by the time we had time again, I was out of my gear.
I would love to see the two of you fight. That would be epic. Very
You
cool.
just want to see me get my ass beat.
Well, no, I think that your styles would match up very well. You both move very well, but very differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What event have you never gone to that you would like to go to?
Eggles.
Eagles? That's a cool one.
One that when I was growing up had a huge reputation, and I never managed to go.
Yeah. The tournament isn't quite as big as it was back in the day, but it's still a super cool event. All right. If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
Branos.
I love that he's doing the coach's corner because I love peeking into his brain almost every week. It's pretty awesome.
I find it works better after a couple of beers.
His brain or listening to him?
Getting a peek into his brain.
Okay.
I used to see him every year when I went out to the Mid-Realm Shiv Retreat. And one of the things that I would make a point of, in addition to fighting him, was getting some time across the table with a beer.
Well, cool. I'm going to have to see if I can finagle that sometime in the future.
Once they start having him again, yeah.
All right. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Since we're going period, Flesh and Blood.
Okay, cool. Nice. Who are your favorite people to watch fight?
Beck, Branos, Ulfgar, Cullen.
Cullen from the East.
Cullen McCain from the East, yeah.
Yeah. He's pretty epic with his glaive.
He fights with a glaive in a style that goes forward, not back.
Yes. Yes, that's a great way to
That's rare.
explain it. Yeah. Yeah. He's very in your face.
Yep.
If you had to recommend one event in your kingdom from someone out of kingdom to go to, what would it be?
Are we making the assumption that this is a fighting related event or just in general?
Just in general.
I'm going to go with June Crown.
Okay.
Because June Crown is the crown where it stays light the latest. So we end up fighting just for damn ever. And because it is a crown tournament, all of the other aspects of what we do are also on display.
Cool. What book do you think everyone on the path to knighthood should read?
I have to limit it to one?
No. You can give me your top 3 or whatever.
Okay, here's the list. Morte Arthur. If you haven't read Morte Arthur, you will have no clue about what the kind of Victorian picture of knighthood is that we in the SCA actually follow. Glory Road by Robert Heinlein.
That's a new one. No one's ever said that one. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
It does a very good job of kind of showing you how knighthood can go not quite right, but be redeemed.
Cool.
I'd say those two. Yeah, really just those two.
Okay. Cool. I get to look up something new. That makes me happy. If you could change one thing about the SCA, what would it be?
Oh, only one? I think if I could change a thing about the SCA, it would be to pick a way in which we fight and lock it in. Whatever it happens to be, whatever span it is, from rapier on one end to heavy on the other, some things in between, and kind of say, these are the edges. Stay between them. You know, I see that we, as a group, tend to want to have a very large tent. Bring everybody in. Oh, you want to do steel fighting? Great, come on in. We'll morph our rules around in a way to allow that. Oh, you want to do this other thing? Come on in. We'll find a way to morph our rules around. I'm more of the opinion that we have a set of rules and concepts that work. And if the thing that somebody wants to do can fit into those, even with minor adjustment, okay. But let's not spread ourselves so thin that we lose who we are.
I think that's pretty cool. It's one of the things I've always thought was really cool about the Order of the Shiv is that we all specialize in sort of the same, I mean, different weapon forms, you know, different styles, but the same basic thing. And so there's that level of commonality in what we all do that is pretty cool in having the conversation that you don't have with well, I guess the mods have it because they're all the same thing too, but the other peerage, you know, they all have their different things. Anyway. All right. What do you think is the most important trait to become a successful fighter?
Perseverance.
Perseverance?
If you are not as stubborn as a pack of mules, you will never be a successful fighter.
Stubborn.
And I don't really care how you define success. It doesn't matter. You won't be if you don't keep at it, whatever it is.
And last question. Who is your favorite person to fight ever? Or favorite fight ever?
my favorite, those are two different answers.
Okay.
My favorite person to fight is Beck. My favorite fight ever is the fight that Branos and I had at Heroic Champions at Pensick 45, because that was the best fight of my life ever. And it's not like I had a perfect fight. I didn't. But
what made it the best fight? Is that it pushed you, or?
It pushed me. It was a fight where I was able to see that I had started down the road towards making a mistake and had it and changed it. It was a fight where I was able to get one of, if not flat out, the best positional fighters in the world to play my game for a while. Not a lot of it. Maybe the last 3 seconds out of 5 minutes.
There's that humility thing coming in again, right?
Just being honest.
Yeah.
We spent most of 5 minutes arguing about whose fight it was. And then there was one mistake and the fight was over, which is the way a fight at that level should be. I'm just glad that the mistake was Branos's and not mine.
Cool.
Now, full disclosure, after that tournament, we went off on the side and he took me to school. Like, we fought 10 passes and I think I hit him once. Maybe.
And what makes Beck your favorite person?
There is nobody in the world who can play in a fight, who can just screw around and have a good time in a fight like Duke, Stephen, and Beckenham.
Cool. I'm gonna have to look him up. I don't think I've ever gotten to fight him. And when we talked to him too, he's such a cool guy.
He really is. These days to fight him, you'll have to go to the mid-realm.
Well, he said that we could come to their Shiv retreat.
Yep.
A couple of them have said that. I think Felix invited me too. And I'm like, I'm all over that when they have that and we're doing stuff again. That sounds like a blast.
See you there.
All right, cool.
I've been to a bunch and they're awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. It's been really insightful. I appreciate you going down the rabbit holes with me and talking. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I think I have a pretty clear schedule this week. I think I not talk to somebody else until Trelon next Sunday. So that should be very interesting as well. So thank you, Your Grace, and thanks everyone for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Plan. Good night.